Julie, we just heard from the former Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, and he spoke in epic terms of a presidency, at the end of communism, of the fall of the Berlin Wall, but he also spoke on personal terms as a friend. And he started off when they first met, and he talked about character, and everyone is also speaking about humor. President H.W. Bush was known for his sense of humor. Former Senator Alan Simpson is now speaking, and he started out with a joke too. You see the president's sons in the front row with their wives, including the 43rd President George H.W. Bush. His daughter, the granddaughter of President Bush Sr., just gave a reading as well. So it's a somber occasion inside the National Cathedral behind me, with many international leaders, as well as all of the U.S. presidents that are still alive, including Jimmy Carter, whose wife is not in attendance, but the rest of the first ladies are in attendance. It's somber, and clearly politics has been put aside today for personal remembrances. But when people talk about the president, they also talk about him as a war hero, and they bring up World War II. They talk about his public service, and they talk about the end of an era of that kind of public service. He's the last president that served in a war, and he is the president who had the longest marriage. So it's about family, and it's about marriage, and it's about public service, and it's quite a tribute here today, Shuli.
Yeah, he was in office from 1989 to 1993. Let's talk a little bit about his legacy. What were the key points of his presidency, and what were the main issues?
Well, in terms of foreign policy, he did form an international coalition for that first Gulf War, and they went into Kuwait, and Saddam Hussein did back off, but they didn't go into Iraq. He, at the time, didn't think that that was a good idea, and that would be taken up by his son, as we know. Also, during that time, it was the end of the Cold War. The last Soviet leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, sent his condolences, saying that he was a partner that helped end the Cold War and end the nuclear arms race. So it was only 4 years, but he had served 8 years as vice president under Ronald Reagan. He had been the CIA director before that. He had a lot of experience also with China as an envoy there. It was a very tumultuous time in terms of foreign policy, but also his policies domestically. Many say that when he promised, he said this famous thing, "Read my lips, no new taxes." He actually ended up during his presidency forming a bipartisan deal that did raise taxes, and people say that that was probably the end of his presidency, why he wasn't reelected. It actually was one of the reasons some of the Republicans turned against him. But clearly today, you're not seeing any partisan issues. You're not seeing President Trump speak politics at all. He's not even speaking. He's not giving the eulogy, which is traditionally the sitting president's job. It's the son, the 43rd president, that's eulogizing his father here today, Shuli.
Courtney, thank you. Courtney Keeley there in Washington, D.C., where the state funeral of the 41st U.S. president is underway.